Good afternoon, my fellow Canadians. Good afternoon, YouTube. So this is the final video to conclude this very rich supply of information from Ezra Levant. I particularly appreciated how he managed to cover conspiracy theories with such class, because there's a lot of things that are circulating about the web that we all know could possibly be nonsense, but maybe there is a grain of truth in there that we shouldn't just dismiss out of hand. So I will let the clip continue, and then I'll make my comments as we go along, because there was a few things I wanted to comment in the previous video, but I'd rather that he continue his speech unencumbered by interruption. So we'll just continue, and thank you again for watching.
Reagan says it's a bioweapon. Well, it certainly is, isn't it? Eugene Yee, where's your proof? Proof of what? The virus came from Wuhan. The Chinese government does not deny that. Now they're circulating a conspiracy theory to the contrary. We need info on what China did in Winnipeg. Well, I think you're referring to the fact that in Winnipeg, one of Canada's high-security virus labs is, and Trudeau bizarrely approved sending the Ebola virus from Canada to China. Why? And then there was a Chinese national working at that virology lab in Winnipeg who was suddenly frog-marched out of the office and fired, obviously for some sort of espionage. Yeah, I don't know if we'll ever learn more about that, the truth about that. Neither Trudeau nor China would want us to hear it.
I find it very, very curious. As I said in the previous video, I don't understand under what conditions that could actually be a viable option. When he talked about this Chinese national transporting Ebola, and he himself approved of the action, that to me is very troubling. So unceremoniously fired for possibility of espionage, because if that person taught, I would expect that that particular person would have been deported for security reasons, because if his government ever got tied to something like that, that the Canadian government could be sending a virus of that caliber, like a plague on humanity. For it doesn't matter what the reason is. Even if the reason was study for some other odd reason, which I doubt. Imagine the kind of dark minds that could conceive of something like that to destroy humanity. That is a serious crime, but of course nobody gives it any credibility because it's too fantastic to believe that something like that could happen, especially in Canada. But the thing I want to point out is the naivete, so to speak, that Canadians are not accustomed to the ruthlessness of Chinese, at least in history. Jordan Peterson spoke of the communists under Mao. So 100 million dead by his estimation. And you have to realize that makes Mao a greater threat than Hitler ever was. And it makes him the deadliest experiment of communism within humanity in living memory. That's the most deaths that's been caused by an ideology, so to speak, and it still continues to this day. So when I look at the situation, especially when Ezra is commenting in the previous video, well, the same video but previous for me, he was talking about that the Chinese were lying about literally everything, can't trust anything that they say. And by Chinese, I mean specifically the Chinese Communist Party, the government. Because many of their own people are suffering under that communist rule. God knows how many. But they can't get free, so they're trapped under that kind of regime. But I want to encourage the fact that the coronavirus is not here by chance. Sure, it came to us from Wuhan, how it came to us, that's under investigation. Let's say that's still not certain. Many theories online suggested that, you know, as Ezra did, that the conditions in Wuhan were right for the coronavirus to come into the human population because of the eating practices of you could say very dirty, very unhygienic conditions for humans and animals to live in that way, and the consumption of live animals like snakes, like bats, like rats, and so on. So it's a place that you could easily create a contamination and a virus. But there are other rumors that circle about that the super lab, the virology lab in Wuhan, was actually the place that it came from, and that it was manufactured. And so you can believe it or you can or you don't. Essentially, the timing is very convenient for coronavirus. Trump has been hammering them with all kinds of tariffs and equalization, you know, because of Trump, what he knew in the past about how America got screwed by the Chinese year after year, new government after new government. Trump is somebody who essentially can look across time. He was there during the Reagan administration. He's seen America, I guess, from greatness go down and down and down. And what I surmise is that the coronavirus is the answer, China's answer, to America becoming strong, because they could no longer play them at their own game. They were just too weak, you could say. So the coronavirus was essentially the next strategy. Ruthless as it may seem to their own people, but I think that if you really study the Communist Party in China, the losses that are there is a price they're willing to accept. And for people here in the West, it would be something inconceivable, too fantastic to claim to even speak of it with any credibility. But I hypothesize that if you really study how the Chinese conduct themselves, the Chinese government, you'll see that genocide is in their blood. It's not a joke. It's not a false claim. It's something that can be quantified in history, and given the fact that it is the timing, the election is on the horizon. Things in America are excellent, but the coronavirus essentially has closed down the world in fear, in panic, and that's what they wanted. They wanted, essentially their attack is the markets, but it's much more than that, because if you demoralize a people by putting them in a state of prison, you could say, because the self-quarantine, the self-isolation, the isolationist policies that people have to avoid being in the crowd and so on, I mean, it's damaging to society itself as a whole, and it's something that you never want to see that come to pass, really. It's a terrible tragedy to behold, that people cowering and essentially they've been not cowering but in fear of contracting the coronavirus and being laid off from their jobs and all their livelihood. Now is the time that if you saved a dollar, you know, you have to be careful in the future. You know, who knows how long this coronavirus could be standing around, lasting, and you cannot be careful enough to avoid the possibility of infection. So it's essentially leaves people trapped. And I'm looking at this and I'm going like, it's not a coincidence. It isn't. Because it's that kind of dirty tactics that I'm familiar with these people, that the Communist Party will never stoop to a level that you can think it's low. They can go even lower. The power of the bullet, the power of money, how to corrupt people abroad, how to bring people into their cause, to support them, how to interfere with the dealings of everyday life. It's not racism. this is something that's empirically observed, that anybody with eyes can see the truth. And you can call it racism, but that's naive. That's the shadow in which they can hide, in the shadow of your weakness and your ignorance. That's the part where they continue to grow. You know, they can become strong in that shadow, and they can become invulnerable in that shadow until, you know, it's too late. You cannot react anymore to what's happening, because they'll buy you off bit by bit, debt by debt, which they are in fact doing. The favorite tactic of economic warfare by Chinese is essentially buy the debt from banks and hold it. And you can use that debt to leverage anyone. It's a really despicable tactic to buy out the poorest of the poor, companies that they see with potential. They buy them quickly, and they leverage them for cash and influence, essentially to achieve their own ends, inroads for others to come in. And I've seen it in Europe, I've seen it all over Asia, I've seen it in the States. This is why Trump has such trouble with the United States now. Things are completely out of balance because of the power of money. Like Adam Schiff and Pelosi, to me, they strike me as not really like human beings. They're like machines. The way they conduct themselves is like they're cocaine addicts. They're really, they don't look normal. But the other thing you might add to that is, why on earth would they betray America in this way? They conduct themselves in a way that is very treasonous to the U.S. That they can attack a president on false pretenses, on false charges, and all those things. And not false because I support or don't support Trump, but truly convicting an innocent man of crimes and trying to impeach him for that. So it proves, by the power of money, because all of us know, Clinton and Obama, you know, God knows how much money they took into their foundations for favors. We know the system can be deeply corrupted, and the Democrat Party loses all credibility because they keep fighting Trump on grounds that are not honorable, you could say, or even legitimate. It's all hearsay. It's nonsense. So I can say the Chinese are at the back. That's my theory. Chinese businessmen or the government have bought them off with God knows how much billions of dollars. Who knows what happened, really? You'll never know unless there's an investigation, and then it will come out. But essentially, this is the world. This is like the third war. And I say it with confidence because I'm looking at, it's not a coincidence. If you're looking for it, you can line it up nicely like pieces in the you know, the ones that topple over each other, dominoes. They're really, it's like a chapter leading into this, leading into this, leading into this conclusion. And you know, our generation is naive. We've never really seen war. We've enjoyed peace. We've enjoyed prosperity, but we are naive. We don't know that kind of how to defend freedom properly, how to see those that seek to undermine freedom, our way of life. We turn a blind eye to it. In that darkness, in that shadow, our enemies become very strong and continue growing, building their community here and expanding and becoming more and more dangerous. They're a true threat. Because, let's face it, what Jordan Peterson said was right. Here in the West, we have the right idea. That's why our society is thriving. But at the same time, our freedom has made us extremely weak, extremely naive, unknowns to attack, you could say. Because the subtle attack is something you won't know until they control everything, and then you'll know. So this video is getting a little bit long. I wanted to continue on Ezra's rant, but I think I'll conclude there. I hope that you don't see this as something that's racist, because it isn't designed to be racist. It's designed to attack the enemies of Western democracy, those that would seek to undermine our freedom here, our way of life. Because, I can only hypothesize. There's no way I could prove that the Chinese government released the coronavirus. I'm only saying that, even though my opinion is not perfect, that I hypothesize that it can be, that it's a possibility. And the more that I'm studying the outcome, the more I'm certain of that possibility. And I hope that you will not be too hard on me, because I don't claim my opinion is perfect, but I mean, I'm part Chinese, so it's a small part. It's from a great grandparent, but it's nothing to do with racism. I assure you, it's exactly to do with that kind of immoral, genocidal behavior that the government of China has been guilty of in the past. That in their own history, that power has passed by bloodshed, and it's in their nature. And we in the West must be wary of that nature. So be careful. Essentially, economic warfare was their style of play. And people that study it know it well, that the Chinese were in fact conducting economic warfare on the world. So, but this, I think, is a upping the ante, so to speak. This is the next level of attack, and I think the West had better recognize their true enemy, so that we can get the situation under control. Because there's no way they're going to let us win if they can gain victory by any means. So, thank you for your time and your attention, and I hope you like and subscribe to my channel and comment, because I read all your comments. Sometimes I cannot answer right away. So thank you for your time. Bye-bye.